Hi.
Welcome back to another Tuesday episode with Jared and Kristi, yours truly. Tonight we have a fun episode with actor, producer, and director Chris Finefrok.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but before we get into it, let's talk Belize.
Yeah, we have an expedition to Belize we'd like to invite everyone to. Please come to the RKEOX website. And I think I've been on enough podcasts now where it's like somebody have said RKEOX.
Do you know what I started doing? So I found myself the other day, we were signing off of a show we were guesting on.
Did you say it?
I forgot the E. I said RKOX. The E slipped my mind. It's because when it flows, it's like RKOX. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just say RKEOX.
RKOX.
But people who don't know it, they just say RKEOX.
Yeah, and you have to enunciate each.
Yeah, which does take time, and I understand that, but there's only so many letters to get to RKEOX. And so this expedition, end of July, we are very much excited about all the details. Please go to the website, check it out.
Yeah, 10 days, 9 nights. We'll be gone. We will leave at the end of July, come back. I think it's the big, like 2nd or 3rd of August. I don't remember. The dates are on the website. And lots of Mayan ruin sites and conscious conversation, breath work, yoga.
Yeah.
Cave tours.
Yes, there's going to be a giant hollowed out mountain. That's going to be amazing.
A giant hollowed out mountain?
Yeah, because...
Is that what all caves are?
No.
I know some are like in the ground.
Yeah, and they're not very big, and they're interesting.
I know.
And it's like, oh, this is as big as a house. I remember the first time I was in one, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then you go into this thing with 90-foot ceilings, and it's not just one room, it's room after room. And you're like, wait, I'm inside a
Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is what we were in.
That's what it felt like while we were in there. There should have been some sort of like soundtrack playing while we were navigating through that cave system. There should have been like a Lord of the Rings like soundtrack playing.
We should do that
behind us.
Oh, shoot. Anyone who watches this, they're going to know we're going to do it. Let's do it.
Because we're just that cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just excited to add in on Chris Finefrock, his research. What we're excited about is that recently in the news, it was figured out that Michigan copper was found in England. And this is known because, it's already known with the Ancient American Preservation Society, Artifact Preservation Society. They already know this. They've been discussing this 2 decades and longer in Upper Michigan. Everyone knows ancient copper mines were traveled by the Phoenicians, but Chris's work to actually world news, making that not only has this great background as an LA person, but to be the researcher who has brought to the forefront an absolute paradigm shift. It's going to be exciting to talk to him. Yeah.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
And he's just an interesting guy.
He is.
He's full of energy. He's really cool.
Should we bring him on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Works, but there's a vortex of awakening information before you know it.
They want you sheep. They want you dumb. The schooling system is very geared towards not making you not curious, making you not creative, but mainly not curious. That whole analytical schooling is to just dumb you down to just a cog in the matrix. So forgive me for going around that, but so then the media is kind of controlled and run by certain things and certain forces, and if you want to be on there, you've got to play certain rules, and otherwise they won't show your stuff. But it's beyond that. It's just they don't show real serious ancient mystery stuff. I don't know. What do you guys think on that? I mean, what's your favorite show that's really unearthed something incredible, like really wowed you?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, go for it. It's your question.
No, it was his question.
No, I know it's a question, but it's your answer.
Is it?
Yeah, 100%. Because this isn't. I didn't grow up watching the Discovery Channel.
Yeah, but that's
you did. I didn't. So
okay.
It's the questions for you.
True enough. So the house I grew up in, Chris, we did not have cable. We only had public television, which meant Channel 2, which meant Nova. It meant all the shows that you can think of. Boy, I might as well just there wasn't a History Channel. There wasn't any.
Go ahead, date yourself a little bit.
No. Yeah, take that back. I'm young enough to throw fit. That means I'm young. So this, my father controlled what we did, what we saw, and so all I did was watch these shows. So I didn't really have a choice, and it turns out I have a really good memory. So I'm watching these shows, but I'm retaining. If there's information, I would retain it. And so anyway, yeah, I didn't think the shows were very good. So it's kind of, I don't know if it's a loaded question or not, in the sense that, is it okay to say, hey, growing up, I don't think those shows did that. Do I think, so I know Scott Walter from America on Earth, and I can say that Scott's work has been revealing, he goes into some real material. But could I talk about YouTubers or no?
Anything you want. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason is because you're right. Network television, PBS, back in the day, there were some solid documentaries, and it wasn't a question. So it's so annoying. They would detail, if it was about space, but it was about basic facts. If it was about Newtonian, Einstein physics, they'll talk about it all day long. So there's lots of detail. If it's about quantum mechanics.
Oh, yeah.
If it's about splits in the human DNA. Do you remember in the 80s? Hopefully I'm dating Chris a little bit, but
don't respond, Chris. Don't respond. Don't take the bait. Don't take the bait.
I'm a master deflector. This is what's happening.
He's gaslighting you.
I don't know about that yet. I think we have a loose term for gaslighting that gets whipped out a lot. We're not quite, I think, defined what that is. But
anywho, go ahead.
What I'm thinking is about that documentary that came out that everyone was fascinated with for 5 seconds. For hey, there's a split in the human DNA. There's an engineered split in the human DNA. Mm-hmm. It was that, I don't know what show it was on. It was about an hour. I remember as a kid, I was fascinated because they're someone artificially split in the human DNA somewhere between 18 and 26,000 years ago. There's a split in the human DNA that was made by some engineering purpose. And it's this is crazy. And then all the information about it went out. Do you remember that? It came out.
Good job.
See, that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted that. You're a good sheep. Go eat some grass.
A story like that just goes away right after, just goes right away, and then it's what? Split DNA, what?
Yeah, and there are definitely shows that they have, edited or have tried to eliminate, or has been, you hear about some of the stuff from the 90s that has been, attempted to be removed by collegiate institutions and saying, hey, we don't even want that show on NBC or what have you. Mm-hmm. The reason I brought up YouTubers is because when you say, is there anyone with real content? And the irony is that this isn't going to hurt us network wise, Chris, is it?
No.
We love the networks.
Yes.
But So Ben from Uncharted X has done a brilliant job, and I watched him in real time. I found him as I was writing my book, It's Not Aliens, and he was brand new. He had a few thousand subscribers, but how he's evolved in the last 5 years by putting out, all he did was go to Egypt, go to Peru, and Egypt at first, so he's Australian, goes to Egypt. And for those that don't know Ben from Uncharted X, I'm absolutely endorsing him. I mean, check out ArcheoX, please follow us. But I don't know Ben at all. So this is just his observational, he took just short videos and then he put it together and made very coherent, in-depth, detailed, advanced toolings, cuttings, and explained it all in what are essentially YouTube, not a knock, but YouTube quality documentaries, right? So anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And they're brilliant because you're seeing the machining, you're seeing the work that is clearly not dynastic Egyptian. And he's explained it all. He's got an Australian accent, damn it, which sounds interesting. Thank God one of us have an accent. I mean, who wants to listen to me? I want to hear like gum flapping, smacking.
It's bumping.
Dang.
It's gum bumping the gums. Okay, whatever. That's
well.
And I've been working on my accent, so it's like barely there.
But the point is that you show a higher level of refinement because you sound interesting. I just sound like a dude from America. You sound interesting.
Do I sound interesting?
Yeah.
I've been told I sound ignorant.
No, that's ignorant.
Ignorant? No, nobody says that.
No one ignorant. I mean.
Anywho, but let's move on.
I don't know who would say that though. So yeah, no, I sound like vanilla, and.
But back to Ben with Uncharted X.
Yeah, so I do think that there are independent. There are other channels of people. Vlad from Ukraine. There's this guy that just puts up brilliant. It's all in Ukrainian. He speaks Russian. But again, his YouTube content is fact after fact. That's not just like, oh, that's an amazing detailed fact. It's things that I think we can use towards consciousness. It's things that we can use to point to like how we live in a home and how we practice day to day. I do think that there is applicable. Actual, not only like ponder our real past, which I do think is helpful.
But hold on, before you trail off there, let's back up and say when you say things like how you live in a home, I think it's important to specify what you mean by that, to clarify what you mean by that.
All right, so this might be ambitious, Chris, but here's the deal. I've done design, build, remodeling for over 25 years total. And my thought for a long time, like about the time you've been curious about this for 15 years, I've thought a lot about when you wake up, people are in the now red light therapy, but they have red light saunas in their home, so that's a step up. But could you have red light therapy on in the kitchen while you make coffee? Could the food that you eat not just be from a local garden or, from your home or from a farmer's market, which is supposed to be healthy, which you have no idea what Orkin man is growing what. Yeah, so I think your home could be a place of prehab and rehab and better meditation. So I think actual sound and frequency that relates to polygonal and megalithic construction, but in reference to not just having more positive brain entrainment, but how can we incorporate the ancient technologies in everything from your food to how you meditate and the water you put on your skin. How could you improve it in a way where it is the most engaging and rejuvenating and revitalizing and engaging and connecting as possible?
So basically we know that we're like human antenna, right? And so we're just receivers of information, and we receive information in a multitude of ways, and through the skin, through the senses, all kinds of ways. And so when we are receiving information in these positive energetic forms, we're raising our vibration, our frequency, and we're matching these higher frequencies in the universe. Like what kind of positive effect does that have, on your daily life when you're living your day that way? And that's something that, a lot of this information, I think the ancients knew, and it's just been lost over time. Maybe not lost, but maybe it's been intentionally kept secret.
Yes.
Go back to the sheep thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, thank you so much for just teaching me all that. I hear you on all fronts, and thank you for that. It's just very frustrating that, that this is the reality that we live in, that this information that you're talking about is not known to the masses, that it's not taught in the schools all around the world. That's very sad. I would certainly give my life to share that information with the masses if it helped people. Like, I think that's about as cool as it gets. So they intentionally keep that stuff from us. That's very frustrating. There's all sorts of people around doing great work around the world. The Hollywood system basically did not give any attention to the YouTube type of stars. Those are the new movie stars. They have so much more power than the couple. There's literally a few movie stars. There's almost zero. Like, literally, you name it, anybody you think, it's almost zero that can finance a movie, that can greenlight a TV series. It's just a couple, almost zero. So these YouTubers who are doing this great work with their camera, not only is that motivating that anybody on the planet can take the same videos and do the same research, but Hollywood literally just ignored those people, and now they're controlling the narrative. So they're very powerful. You guys are very powerful. The ability of the media is very powerful. So I guess just to jump around for 1 second, I would say that so much I want to say here, but just the older technology, these people doing this various work of consolidating pictures of the ancient sites and going to there are so many sites in every state, in every country, that are hidden by foliage, and the stuff is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's the megalithic stuff around Europe. It's in everywhere. So please continue.
No, you have more to say.
Yeah, that's so important, though.
Yeah.
That's an important acknowledgement. I think that, that's something that, and this is what I'm starting to I feel like I'm kind of realizing that, as this is what's so crazy is we all live, I feel like, these different lives, right? With these different life experiences. For myself, I did everything backwards, like marriage, kids, before college. I did everything backwards. I went back to school after I had kids. I was a stay-at-home mom and got my degrees with kids. And so I did everything the hard way. I just like to challenge myself like that, And of course, it was all planned, but I just like to make life harder for me. But so we all grow and evolve at different rates depending on. I always compare this to Maslow's hierarchy. When I did go back to school and I was in psychology and I was learning this hierarchy of needs, basically, and it's really applicable to like almost everything in life. When you look at whether it's physical or mental or whatever, you're not gonna excel to the next rung before you meet the first one, right? So you've got to meet all the basic needs first. And so when you're young and you're raising kids and you do everything in backwards orders, you're spending all your time raising kids and being a mom, and you're just getting through it, right? Every day you're just waking up and you're doing the thing, whatever it takes to get through it. And I look back now. My oldest is 22, my youngest is 15. And I look back now and I just think to myself, how the hell did I do it? Yeah, like the last 22 years, like how the hell did I do that? And I got a master's degree while doing it. And it's just, I look back at that now and I'm like, how the hell did I do that? I have no idea how I did it. But when you get in it, you just do it, right? And it's like you put the blinders on and you just dig in that grit and pull it out and you just do it, right? And so, but while you're doing that, you don't have time to ponder a whole lot about your existence.
Yes.
Or where you come from. So it's like I'm waking up at this age, right? But there might be people where we can't really judge it because, maybe there's people in their 60s or 70s who are just now waking up because their life experience has been so difficult. They've not had the the brain space, like the time for their brain to relax enough, the space, the time it needs to not think, to not survive, to not fight, to do this or that or whatever, so that you can actually have thoughts like this. You know what I mean? And so it's like now, because I feel like technology, not only does it disseminate information so broadly and so fast, but it has created efficiencies that we didn't have decades ago, you know, where you're doing things manually, which take more time. And that time takes away from the time that you can spend sitting and thinking. And so we've got this massive movement of this awakening happening. All these people are waking up and asking all of these questions about where they come from and, you know, all this stuff. But that, I think that's because we have more time now to sit, you know. It's like where it was manual labor, now we're sitting behind computers all day, you know. And so people are on devices. People have more time to think about and ponder their origins and all of this stuff. But before, we didn't have that. Like we didn't have that time. And so I'm going to circle and make it make sense. But the megalithic structures and all of this stuff all over the planet, you've got people like me who are just now understanding that there is this deep connection between rocks and life, you know, whereas, and that's very simple, you know, obviously it's a simple way to put it, you know, I could say megalithic structures and consciousness, but basically rocks and life, you know, there is this connection between rocks and life. How does this make sense? You know, how does something so physical that I can look at, I'm looking at it and okay, now I'm looking at what I think is a rock, but now I realize this rock has been meticulously laser cut and it's, you know, thousands, millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years old. And it's just, and then it's just like, wait a minute, how does this make sense with the religious programming? You know, how do, and so then you bring religion into it. And then it's just like, holy shit, everything's connected. Everything's connected. And so while we've got all of these megalithic structures sprinkled, I'm circling back here, we've got all of these megalithic structures sprinkled all over the globe, and we're looking around at humanity. We mentioned this earlier. People, it's like they don't pay attention to this stuff. It's just like they hear about it, like the DNA cut, but they're not digging into it. They're not doing any further research. We're not talking about it. It's not in the mainstream media. Most people don't know. And unless you're into this, you don't ask these questions. And unless you have the bandwidth and the time and your life experience has allowed you that to ask these bigger questions, most people aren't running around the planet trying to understand why there are megalithic structures from our ancient past sprinkled all over the planet and nobody's talking about it. You know, we're just now becoming a society, I feel like, in our lifetimes that are awake enough to step back and look at this and ask these questions and go, wait a minute, how does this make sense? And for people who are further along on this journey, you're looking at other people like, how do you not see this? How do you not know this? How are you not asking these questions? But I think what it boils down to is bandwidth, time, and the life experience of people. It's just different for everybody. The timing is different for everybody.
Beautiful.
That was a lot.
Beautiful. Jared, what do you think? Gorgeous.
Chris, what do you think?
That was
sorry, guys.
And some really interesting new thoughts for me there too, tremendously. So thank you for that. I've definitely learned that, you know, when you work an 8-hour day and then, you know, you have to feed your family and you got to deal with your wife that is, you know, yelling at you. This is hypothetical. And the kids that are, you know, it's you don't have time to research.
Sure.
Is exactly what you're saying. And
yes.
And so you don't care. You literally don't care because you're busy. And so that is very
important. It's not
important.
that you don't care. I think it's just you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Well,
I think people really care on a cellular level.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if they understood the gravity of how it affects our life, how it has the potential to completely shift realities for the majority of the people on the planet, you know, I think that sometimes that might be too much, like you said. You just said, and you said too, when you say people don't care, maybe it's not that they don't care. Maybe, I don't know, maybe some people don't. And maybe some people don't want to because because the fallout from it, the consequences, the work that comes after waking up, the shift, all the things you have to change about yourself and your lifestyle. Some people just are like, oh, I'm content. It's fine.
Yeah. It's scary. There's certainly fears there. And I witness it with archaeologists all the time. They just don't want to go there. They just don't want to see, the evidence. They just don't want to see it.
Because it challenges everything they've ever learned, everything they've spent their life studying. It challenges everything.
Everything.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Jared, please.
No, go ahead, Chris.
No, Jared, you go. I've said it. I'll go next.
Okay. Well, I think what you had said, Chris, earlier, and you talked about waking up. I think there's three. I think there's more than three parts, but there's three parts here that is part of it. One is you all have a perspective. There's the part where you're sheep. Part of becoming a sheep is not having a spiritual or religious side, but when you grow up in a system, if you learn something that's outside of that system, whether it's archaeology or your spiritual practice. And I say it carefully that way because there are plenty of people listening that I want everyone engaged. I want everyone engaged, Chris, with you, me, and Kristi. I want us all to not be, I don't want the shield to go up right away and for someone to check out of a conversation because I say the wrong thing about their spiritual practice.
Right.
But I'm throwing that elephant in the room because the reality is I'm hoping the few people that are listening that might check out, I want them to stay in.
Yeah.
And so you have a filter, and getting past the filter is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get past the filter and you, in quotes, and I like this. One of the things that we haven't talked about is waking up. Either you've always been curious, which you have. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had that UFO experience when you were young, but you've always been curious. Mm-hmm. So you've been there. And I think there are some people who are like, just never had the capacity or bandwidth to be curious. Then there are people who are curious, but the idea of then you're waking up, there's some major pitfalls. One, do you wanna, because you have all this programming? Mm-hmm. Two, as you're waking up, you find a new spiritual practice. You get into meditation, you get into yoga, you get into breath work, but then they themselves have their own pitfalls. So they have their own systems, and it's all about the Anunnaki. It's all about some magical system that you learned about that's 5,000 years old. The problem is we're talking about history that's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years old, and biological programming. We're not talking about just megalithic giant stones that were cut. We're talking magnetized geopolymers that work with sound and frequency, that connect to engineered soils, that likely connect to us, that connect to consciousness, and allow us to practice not meditation just as a spiritual afterthought or we're leveling up, but in a way that I can directly connect with you, and we can actually function and be aware maybe as we're spinning and traveling through the solar system, galactic positioning and universe. We may have created a way for us to sense and feel a greater on a quantum level. Okay, so this is as far. How far out? It's hard enough to think that we may have all been collectively conscious and like, hey, what are you doing for dinner? And we can work it out in our minds.
Right.
It's another thing to go, I'm experiencing the discovery of another solar system in another galaxy, or a discovery of another galaxy. And I'm also sensing that it has a consciousness.
Oh, that's big.
And be able to talk with it or feel it.
Oh, that's even bigger.
And to do it over and over, and then to share it collectively.
Yeah.
And how do we experience it as a group from here to there? And so there's a lot of layers where it's like, oh, we get tingly sensations and we get vibrations, and it's like I want to puke all this out to everybody all the time, and like this is what my awareness is personally. This is what I'm trying to live from. This is what I'm trying to refine when I want to be healthier and I want to be mindful. I want to manifest. We want to manifest our, we have a show to work with you on, and we have a podcast to work on, and I want to be fitter and things. But in my mind, I'm thinking, really, when it's like, Jared, are you always thinking? And it's like, no, I'm thinking about wanting to be
better.
And I do think there's, you mentioned kids and a family and stuff like that. I do think there's a connection. There's a difference between male and female. And I do think that there's a way for us to amplify these experiences and these things. And I don't know what they all are, but I do think that it starts with being open to this conversation, not hearing the words spiritual differences or your family of origin is going to be different. But I do think not only not shutting off is important and waking up is important, but those are just the stepping stones to then not fall into this like spiritual vortex. And I won't mention the networks, but there's a vortex of awakening new information. Before you know it, you're hearing a lot of words, but nothing's actually being said, and you're not actually like leveling up, but you're like, well, this is all fascinating subject. And you can go down a whole nother rabbit hole of like a flea market of information that, is it helpful?
Well, I think that's part of the problem. Kristi, you can tell me what your thoughts are on this. Like, I feel like sometimes because of, the internet is great, right? In so many ways, it provides us all of these resources and connectivity and all of these things that we can do because of the internet. But also it's information overload. Like there's just so much information all the time. So like you're saying, like at what point is it just too much? Like at what point is this the information is just too much? And you have to, so it's like I think that's what happens to people when they're spiritually, when they're waking up, right? They reach a point where it's just like so much information. You don't know where to turn. You're looking for your origins. Do I come from space? And did the Anunnaki make me? Am I actually from Samaria? Have I lived multiple lives? Am I currently living multiple lives? I mean, there's all of these questions that we just don't have the answers to. We're getting there, but we don't have the answers to them. So at some point, I feel like people get spiritually exhausted.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah. And it's just like, I cannot figure it out, instead of an acceptance of, we're probably never going to figure it out. Like I'm there, probably not, but it's not going to stop me from like looking, you know what I mean?
She gave up.
Yeah.
Like, we're probably not going to figure it out, but I'm cool with that, but it's not going to stop me from, you know what I mean? Like I still want to look, I still want to know, I still want to understand. And I want to hear different theories and see what resonates, because that's typically what happens.
Yeah.
Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my goal is to try to figure this out in our lifetimes. So that's the goal.
Yes.
And to share that with 8 billion people. That's the goal as well.
Yeah.
We'll see what will happen.
Without getting unalived in the process.
Yes. I learned a wonderful thing the other day. It was my lack of, I would call myself a spiritual person a long time ago in college, wanting to look up things in Buddhism, just wanting to look up everything. Went to a Jesuit college, but obviously that wasn't my cup of tea. But since that was the military branch of the Catholics coming into the Americas, but separate, I didn't know that at the time, but I was told the other day that my spirituality is what's missing, and that I have become so obsessed with self that and selfish, that the spirituality has gone away. And so the simple act of just doing anything for somebody else, anything at all, gets you out of yourself, which theoretically is connecting you to spirit, to the universe. So that's my thought for the week, is just trying to rebuild this spiritual connection that if you ask the universe, some magic happens sometimes.
Right. You're right. You're right. And I think too, like, I think that's part of, because I just told you this yesterday, that I was feeling like a spiritual disconnect, a little bit. And I know the practices, you know, it's like, you know, conceptually what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know I need to get on the mat. I know I need to grab my blanket and sit down and meditate. You know, like, I know I need to plug my ears. I need to feel myself. I need to get inside myself. I need to reconnect with spirit. I know what I need to do, the steps I need to take. And so I start walking through the steps, and I just recently got back in my journal. And so I'm journaling again, and I can feel like a slow rebuild in that, like, you know, the reconnection to spirit. But like you said, that getting too wrapped up in self, it's like we've got ego, right? And we've got self, and you can go from one end of the spectrum to the other. It's like, okay, I want to be so far separate from my ego. So you cling to yourself, and it's like, okay, I'm going to dive into all this self stuff. But then it's almost like it's that self loops back around to the ego. Like, if you get too into yourself, then you just loop right back around to your ego. And it's like, wait a minute, it's not about me. It's about all of us. It's about the connection to everything. So it's not about just our connection to spirit. It's about our connection to spirit, which connects to everything. And so when we connect and we do things, like you were saying, for other people, it's almost like a feedback loop. You were connecting to other people. We're connecting to spirit through other people. Mm-hmm. Service, acts of service for other people.
Yeah, community. Yeah, service. Yeah, it's just interesting. It hit me at a good time. So
good.
Hey, Chris. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jared, please.
Well, I was just going to ask you. You said it's something you're working on this week? Did somebody specifically? Were you given an observation that you were no longer, you weren't spiritual, or you were disconnected? Is someone actually critiqued you that way?
It's in a group therapy situation. So in a group together trying to figure out what's wrong, a group of selfish people that, what are you missing? And you're missing two things. You're so selfish, but then you've also lost the spiritual connection. So it's get the spiritual connection going by getting outside of yourself, theoretically helps you and helps everybody around you. So that's what I'm just trying to work on.
Did that feedback resonate with you? Like, as yourself, did you,
the loss of my spirituality over the last few years would have resonated with me. That would have been like, exactly. Work on that immediately. So it did resonate then. You're saying that it did, or it didn't? It did. We all have different connections to the same thing. So we're all theoretically, all of the different religions are theoretically, we're talking to the same thing, whatever that is. Sure. I just had lost that, the ability to talk out loud, and you're talking to your ancestors. I mean, this stuff is very real. That, the ability to, if those documents were true, that the CIA released, that we're able to, mind project, that we're able to, if that's true. Matt Beal just interviewed remote viewer number 1, McDougal, and didn't believe what he was saying, that you're literally able to go to Russia and open a drawer and, look at the nuclear codes as you open the drawer with your, so, I mean, you can do some of that stuff with different drugs, but this unknown connection to, we don't know. We have no idea why we're here, what we're doing here. Like, so anybody that says they do know for sure, well, I would probably, we don't know for sure anything. And for some reason, we're not supposed to quite figure it out. We're not supposed to. Are we though? Like, are we, or do you feel like there, like we said earlier at the beginning of the show, are there powers, that are keeping us separate from that intentionally, or maybe we are supposed to know? Well, these ancient technologies of the sound, that this sound was used as a weapon, that you could project a sound beam and you could make your enemy go crazy. You know, these sound technologies are real. They use these ancient sound technologies in a myriad of ways, from healing at Malta and the Hypergeum to Turkey, India, the laser cutting you talk about. So these ancient technologies of sound, and no, they don't want you to know this stuff, but the internet has made it so they can't really hide it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's problematic.
That's right. Well, and also, you know, platforms like YouTube and, you know, the ones that we use for podcasting, you know, it's really hard to censor everybody. You know, when you've got the more and more people, I think, that wake up, the more and more people that find the courage to start speaking out about this kind of stuff, I think it's gonna become harder and harder to shadow ban and shut down and silence, you know, because there's going to be more and more of us that are waking up and seeing the truth and speaking out and saying, hey, this isn't okay. But, you know, just as crazy, I just read something the other day to your point about realities, Chris. Like, this isn't like, at what point, you know, we're all waking up, right? And we're gathering this new information. I think it's so important that we stay connected to ourselves, and if we're not connected, reconnect to ourselves and to spirit, because I think that connection is what we need. I know that connection is what we need to guide us into the future, because I think that times are just weird, and we've got this spiritual revolution happening, right? Where we've got all of these people waking up all over the planet. And all of the masses are like, wait a minute, what the hell is happening? What's reality? Where do we come from? What's going on here? What's our purpose? What are we doing? And so we've got this innate desire for people that want to know where they come from and what's going on. And it's going to get harder and harder to silence these voices. It's going to get harder and harder to shut everybody up. But at the same time, you've got all of this information coming in, and it's going to make it that much easier for the powers to twist information. You know, once you see the direction that the society is moving or culture is moving, then you're able to kind of, you know, guide it in the ways that you want. And so I think it's really important that connection to spirit and ourselves is going to connect us to our intuition. And the more connected we are to intuition, the less we need outside information to make decisions, right? The more connected to spirit you are, the less you need outside information to make decisions and decide what you believe, what you feel, and what your perspective is. And I think that moving forward, we have to be really careful. We've got this AI technology coming out, and we have, you know, all of these people waking up and collecting information and sharing their perspectives. And then you've got other people waking up, and you've got people that are, you know, like, let's just say midway through an awakening. And I don't even know what that looks like. I'm just throwing it out there for visual. You got people like midway through an awakening trying to guide new people waking up, but the people that are just now waking up or midway through, they don't even know. None of us really have the answers, right? We're all doing the best we can with this information. So the powers can come in and they can start putting in information to whatever, feeding into whatever realities that now we've got this group over here of people who are asleep and this group over here of people that are awake or waking up. And so it's like, well, let's feed this information, but now we've got this group we have to contain here. So what are we going to do here? How are we going to shift their realities? So in order to avoid that misinformation, in order to avoid being misdirected in your awakening, I think it's so crucial and so important that we connect to spirit and we connect to ourselves in order to be able to decipher what's true and what's not, and what's right and what's wrong, and the ways in which we should move through the future moving forward, and the ways in which we seek, because they can easily come in and misguide us and shut us down. Because once you know what somebody is after, you can sprinkle whatever breadcrumbs you want for them to pick up. So we have to be so intuitive. And the way to do that is going to be a reconnection to spirit through means of breath work, meditation, yoga, healthy living, you know, designing your home the way it needs to be. There's a red light therapy, like biohacking, all of the things to keep the neurons fresh in our brains, rebuild neural pathways through plant medicine, psilocybin. I don't know. I could go on for days about this.
Yeah.
Somebody else talk.
Well, I love it, and thank you for that. I would just say that I have tried to understand academia's response to this. You know, archaeologists, academia, like I want to understand. And so, do we need their support, you know, to reach the you know, what you're talking about with, if everybody's waking up, but you have academia who is basically just saying we only deal in evidence and you people are all stupid. You know, do we need academia, even though they're teaching the kids the wrong things? Or, you know, yeah.
What do you mean? Oh,
So I recently read where because of some of the new laws that Harvard was not going to get on board with some of the new executive orders that Trump passed, and then they found out they were going to get $2 billion in federal funding pulled. And so once they were like, "Oh shit, we're going to get $2 billion pulled," they were like, "Okay, so now we are on board." And so it's kind of like, where do you, at what point do you, and we just had this conversation the other day, you know, and actually Harvard was the example. And then like 2 days later, I get into this rabbit hole and I'm reading that, you know, all these new executive orders Trump has passed anyway.
timely, aren't we?
Yeah, right. Timely. But that's a great question, Chris. Like, what do you do? Because you either have to have the backing from, you have to have some sort of backing from some arena, you know? And I think that that academia is a hard one, because they're backed by, a lot of them are backed by federal funding. And if the government isn't on board with people waking up, if the government isn't on board with truth, if the government isn't on board, then how could academia ever get on board? Because their funding gets pulled if they're not in agreement.
Thank you. Yes.
You're I think you guys, for the subject matter, for the total topic of it, I want to tie this in with what Chris, you were saying about do we need academia? Do we need mainstream media? Do we need any of it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that everything that we've tabled is part of the solution of the problem. As mainstream academia, whether it's muting the fines or the past or how we're supposed to look at, I mean, we can go into it's not a conspiracy to say Rockefeller, the original Rockefeller, wrote about during the Industrial Revolution, they were deciding how should education look. Mm-hmm. This is not a conspiracy. They literally stated, we need people to go into, for those that don't know, and that I thank you for our younger audience, but they literally said, we need someone that's going to be willing to do a repetitive task. And by the way, this is Industrial Revolution, so Upton Sinclair, for all of those who have read The Jungle, not for 8 hours, but for 15 to 20 hours a day. We need people to be machines, and they have to not ask questions. They have to be content with that. To create worker bees, you have to have people that don't ask questions. This is literally in his memoirs. This is what they designed. So there's a they, and so you have an educational system designed around creating people who will be content. Part of being content from the beginning of the century, not the millennia, because we're in a new one, which is weird. We've overlapped millennia.
Yeah, it's a weird time to be alive.
It is.
It's really a weird time to be alive.
Isn't it? So yeah, I just think that when we look very cautiously at how do we distinguish what we're being programmed with versus how we want to experience life on a daily basis,
right.
I think there's a distinction there, but then it's like you can get lost in the weeds and what are the distinctions? Mm-hmm. And then there's like, then there's actually practicing. It's like, how much can I actually practice? So I think this ties in, Chris, with what yours and mine, what we gravitated towards, why we met at the Ancient American Preservation Society, and your motivation in being there and why we're talking is that, can we tell a story? Maybe this is it. I mean, maybe this is like the nit and gritty of it, and what we're trying to do with the podcast and what we're trying to do with filmmaking, all of us, or that documentarian work that we're doing, and whether it's YouTube or whether we do it with mainstream or not. I think there's I think that there's a absolute need to provide content that is trackable no matter where you're at in your development, to apply to your journey to be not stuck, whether it's your spiritual practice or whether it's your waking up part. But I think that we should definitely practice this, and we should definitely continue with thinking through how are we going to develop this individually. And I think that when we're talking about exactly these kind of connections, if we're going to practice them, and when we're asking the questions, and again, I can, in the back of my mind, every time we're all having these conversations, or whether it's network, we're talking about telling information about waking, not just waking up, more like, hey, are you asking questions? Are you a sheep? Are you just going with something in general? And whether it's academia or whether it's what we're finding in mainstream productions, or whether we're talking YouTube or we're talking, and again, there's definitely limits to what you can do on YouTube or anything else. It's like you can't say everything that is real. And so now it's like, okay, what do you do with the info? And I think in telling a story with you, Chris, and I it feels like it kind of hit me that there's definitely a point. There's a reason you were at AAPS. For everyone listening, that's the Ancient American Preservation Society. Ancient. Oh wait, did I leave out Artifact? I left out Artifact, didn't I?
That's okay.
Artifact Ancient Artifact Preservation Society.
There you go. That sounds right.
Yeah. So, which we got to get into, by the way, which is, this is a society that Tom Elmore, our third partner for ArchaeoX, he and I were invited to speak. And
actually, second partner, because he was before me.
Kristi doesn't keep tabs, of course, for anyone listening.
We want everything accurate. It's good.
Yeah.
I just feel like he should get the respect he deserves.
Nice.
But anyways, go ahead.
Okay, that's very polite. Thank you.
Love you, Tom.
So yeah, so Tom's out actually doing LiDAR scans in the field right now with someone who does GPR and GPS and also does scanning. So he's out with part of the GeoNav group, which is our associated, definitely beautiful partners out in the East Coast. They are out scanning a mysterious site right now as we speak, which is why Tom is not joining us. However, so yeah, we podcast, but we actually like to go do the work and figure these things out. And then how does that relate to our consciousness? It's all great and dandy and everything else. But yeah, the idea of meeting you at a society that has been for 20 years, greatly speaking, silently, somehow like unheard, that there is copper in Michigan that is being related directly and to finds that they have now published. The big news of a week and a half ago, that copper from Michigan was found in England. And we're literally at a society. You and I are there at the conference. I'm speaking. Michael Cremo is speaking. He's there with us. And we're aware of hundreds of thousands and millions of years of human history that have been paleoanthropologically, like that's the very institutions we've talked about found this information. It's not Michael making it up. It's these institutions. And we are all there discussing copper metallurgy found in Europe, in the Mediterranean, all indicating travel to the Americas 3.5, 4,000, 5,000 years before America, in quotes, was discovered. Mm-hmm. And Chris and I meet there, which I think is really timely, not just because it's that conference, but there is an audience and a need and a desire for everyone who's waking up to keep adjusting their direction to wake up, adjusting their tuning and filtering out what is noise and static in their discovery of themselves.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying earlier about all of the information. It's like information overload. You know, we're constantly bombarded with information. And when it comes to waking up and being asleep and all this stuff, it's like this new movement, the awakening, the Great Awakening, right? It's this new movement. And now it's all these people are waking up, which is great and fantastic and wonderful and beautiful in so many ways. But that's what I was saying earlier, is we have to be so careful with this awakening. Because the more awake you become, the more you realize that there are all of these, for the general population, unknown entities that are in power, right? We don't know who they are. We don't know where they come from. We don't know if it's our government. We don't know if it's aliens. We don't know. You know, we don't have any idea who it is that's in power, but we do know somebody's pulling the strings around us, you know, and so they're affecting the fabric of reality to a certain point for all of us. And so once you know that, it's like, okay, well, if they're that powerful, they have that much power that they can affect that, then we have to be so careful with the information, where we get it and how we integrate it. Because if we're not connected to ourselves, if you don't know who you are, you know, if you don't have the confidence in your own spirit, in your own self and knowing who you are, then how can you disseminate the information coming through? How can you determine what is good for your spirit and what is not if you're not connected to your spirit? So there has to be a connection. And I think that is what needs to be focused on, is using, incorporating, integrating whatever technologies and techniques are available to us that resonate. And this is an individual thing for each person. You know, the different things resonate differently for different people, depending on your experience, where you are in your journey, you know, what your mission is in this life, assuming that we have one. And if it's not something that resonates with you, that you have to pay attention to that. You can't just be a sheep anymore. You have to, it's time for people to realize that the powers that be are only powerful because we allow it. You know, at some point, we as a society, as a race, as a collective consciousness have to, you know, collectively come together as a community and say, no, we're going to unplug from this. We don't want any part of this anymore. And we're going to move this way, you know, but that it's going to take a movement of so many awakened souls to say, now it's time to make a change. We see through the veil, you know, we see what's on the other side, and we don't want any part of that, you know. But it's important, though, when we make these decisions, to make those decisions while we're connected to spirit, you know, and making sure that those resonate with us as part of who we are as a society. Otherwise, we're just creating more division and war and, you know, toxicity on the planet.
Well, thank you for that. Learned a bunch of stuff there.
I told you.
That's why I brought up the academia stuff, because that is kind of, you know, my question to you guys is like, how do you actually see that, you know, big shift, you know, like, do you see people going to the streets? Like, you know, because most of my friends who are gray haired and old, they don't see this happening in their lifetime. They see this happening as the old guards die one at a time and new people come in. That's literally how they see that the academic system cannot be changed from within. It has to have a whole new thing come in. So that's the question, is like, are we satisfied with just us knowing it? That, you know, you can connect, you know, to your higher power, like, or do you need to tell 100 people, or do you need to tell 1 million? Like, you know, how do you see this new age? What's next?
Can I answer this?
Go ahead.
I mean,
yeah.
by the way, when I say
I've done
answer
so
this,
much talking. You go ahead, but I want to come back because I've got kids that are waking up. So
great,
I can't speak to that.
Great student, but talks too much.
Great student, but talks too much. That's me. That's me.
Too many questions. You're not supposed to ask questions. All right, go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
No, well, I think that what's interesting about this is whether you tell 100 or not. I have a bigger point to make. I think, or an observation, which is one of the things that I've always tried to figure out is, here's the analogy I used to use, and I'll go into my answer, but I think this is important. I have theorized that what if in biohacking, I always think of it of, oh, we're this external human and we seem to have this electronic signaling. So let's say whether it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago, we connect to the earth. And we're like, okay, let's think and observe how we could greater connect to the earth. And then also, how can we amplify the frequencies and energies so that we're connecting to the galaxy, the universe, and those consciousnesses. And then it's like, oh, wait, we have these quantum level connections to the universe. Great. But what if it's also the other way around? What if we didn't just program ourselves to work with the planet? What if the planet got programmed to work with us? So one of the analogies I use is, say there's a bee that's going to sting you, but it doesn't sting someone else. What if the planet has been inherently programmed with a safe mode that allows us to better amplify our consciousness or connection? What if something catastrophic happened, like now, like where we're all disconnected? What if, Chris, it's not whether or not we connect with 100 people or 1 or 1,000 or just a partner? What if connecting, and again, my analogy was, what if the planet was inherently programmed that if everything went to crap, that as one person's waking up, like if you and I are on a ladder and there's bees, what if the planet itself was like, look, that person's waking up, the other person isn't, I don't care if you sting them or not, but this other person's like connecting.
Oh, that's good. And it's like a protection thing.
Right. So the one thing, the planet knows enough to say, hey, look, keep this one going. Don't care what happens with that one, but don't let this one thing happen. So sometimes we think it's fate, or we try to say that the gods are protecting us. But what if the planet itself has an inherent system where, as you're connecting back to it and it is connected to you, it knows to protect you a little more than someone else. But what if a little bit further? What if we have been biologically, what if part of that junk DNA and that collective consciousness isn't, as we're just waking up realizing, hey, we should help other people? What if part of that collective consciousness, what if the bioprogramming of the planet itself and some of these kind of like the ambers of a fire where they spark here and there, what if that biotechnical system, when it's firing here and there, does pick up that, hey, Chris, you should affect 100 people or 1,000 people. That's a good idea. But individually, what if all of us are already receiving from not our internally, but what if we're actually receiving from the planet itself, which is also residing in our gut, an instinct to want to help wake others up because it's a collective safe mode? To actually, like, what if our drive to tell these stories, to have this podcast, to have this connection, what if part of it is, and again,
like we were sent here to do it. Like maybe that's, so when we're wondering what our mission is or what our purpose is on the planet, like maybe that we're sent here to do that. Like maybe we're the seeds, the star seeds. Maybe we're the seeds. Like maybe we're the seed. Okay, so I'm sorry. Do you want to finish before I segue? Okay, so back to Chris's question. When you were talking about the older people, you say it's not going to happen in their lifetime, right? So like they're not going to see it in their lifetime. So that may be true. That may be true, but I do think that what we're going to see is a youthful awakened revolution. I think that because there are more and more of us as parents, right, waking up, that we're slowly planting these seeds in our kids and planting seeds of like question. I think that some of these kids were born this way, because I know I've always been the way that I am as far as being curious and seeking. And so when I think about my kids and the way that they are, they're deeply empathetic. They're very compassionate. They're very intuitive. And with it, like they can easily resonate with a lot of the conversations that we have. And what I'm experiencing through their friends, and, I used to be a teacher, so other youth, I see and I was actually a youth leader in my church at one point before I disconnected to that. But, I think that there are our youth are born with this. It's like, Chris, you talk about like whatever this is actually a question. What inspired your seeking? You said like 15 years ago or something this all started. What inspired your seeking?
Well, everybody's start is different, but I was watching The Holy Grail in America, Scott Walter's show, 2009, and I said, if the Kensington runestone is real, so I called him, I went out and talked to him, and then I found all these other things that were real, and that became just one of many things.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of looking for my next cool story, and that kind of hit me over the head. So that certainly could be a force, a God that got me to watch that show.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that is, so I'm from Minnesota. For everyone listening, the Kensington runestone is a Viking Minnesota find that we were talking about this the other day. It is called the Kensington runestone, and it's in Alexandria, Minnesota, where my family would take a vacation every year for 5 years, and we'd go to the damn museum and look at the thing. First time I saw it, I was 14. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it's a Viking runestone, and it's in Minnesota. And that's where Scott Walter is located, right? And you just like go, okay, fascinating. I'm going to go to church on Sunday and
programming.
Yeah, you don't.
Do you just dismiss it that quickly?
We did. All of us did. We were like, it's fascinating.
And that's the thing is we're not, and that's the whole point of all of this is we're not like so when we're born, right? We're born and we go through this programming and conditioning and all of this stuff instead of being born into a society of seekers, like whereas like my kids, like let's just say that this continues, this experience of being human and life on this planet continues for many more generations. Okay, so not assuming that it's not going to, but let's just assume that it is.
That would be great.
I'm not really sure why I prefaced it that way.
That's great optimism.
Anyways, I don't think it's going to end in 2027 or 37, but anyways.
Oh, she made a prediction.
Oh God, I didn't. Okay. I'm just saying.
Everyone run.
No. But really, like these kids, I think that like my kids and my kids' kids, that's when I feel like it's really going to hit is my kids' kids. Because my kids, like I'm already waking up, right? And so my kids are naturally more awake. They're naturally more plugged in. They're seeing through the holes of conditioning and programming in society already. And I can tell because they're so young right now, 15 and 18, like they're so young right now, as they're pointing things out and seeing things, like I know this is a conscious thing for them, right? Like they're consciously, innately, these things are resonating. This is a natural thing that they're experiencing, that they're perceiving, right? In their reality, and they're awake doing it. And so as asleep, as we say, this upcoming, they're plugged into social media and gaming and all of this stuff. Like, yeah, they are. And mine are too. Like my kids, and it's a battle we fight all the time as a parent. So I've got teenagers super plugged into, to social media and gaming and all of this stuff and these alternate realities. But as plugged in as they are to gaming, they are as awake. As counterintuitive as that sounds, they are as awake because while they're as unplugged as it disconnected as it may seem that they are, just like super, they're teenagers and that teenagers are a little out of touch with reality in general, right? I was super out of touch. So, they're naturally out of touch with reality because it's their life experience. You don't really know until you're forced into an adult world what the real world is. When you have adults that protect and take care and do these things, you don't really know. So as out of touch as with reality as they are in touch with themselves as far as the way that they feel and what resonates, how they perceive and what seems to be true to them. And so when I think about their kids, like that generation, I feel like that generation, I can't even imagine what that generation is going to be. When you think about technology and where we have come in just the last 50 years, it's insane how fast the technological advancement have happened. And so when we think about nanotechnology and quantum technology and all of these things that we know are already in existence, we're cloning animals, next is we're probably cloning humans and we don't even know it. But, or maybe we do know it and I just don't know it.
We do. We are.
Okay. We'll see. We haven't gone there yet. So I didn't know that. Anyways.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thanks for bursting that bubble.
Yeah. Keep going. It's a nightmare. Keep going.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And so we think about all this, but at some point there has to be a move. There has to be a change. Like we can't, unless there's going to be another, flood or catastrophic wipeout of the planet, and all of the aliens take
a culling of the herd.
Yeah. Culling of the herd. Okay. A separation of the crowd, whatever we want to call it.
A culling of the sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
Unless that happens, there has to be a generation of change makers. And I think that we're starting this generation of people, and maybe, people started waking up like back in the 70s, you've got like, we all know, and then Nixon came in and was like, this is your brain on drugs. And it's like a fried egg in a pan. You remember that commercial? Remember?
Barely.
So like the war on drugs began, and it wasn't the war on drugs. It was a war on awakening, because those were psychedelics. Those were opening our pineal gland to see things. And the government was quickly like, no, we can't have these people waking up this early. And so they put a ban on drugs. They put a ban on all of the substances that come from the earth that wake us up, like ayahuasca, like cannabis, like psilocybin, these intelligent plants that were meant for us to ingest to help us see and experience and feel and open our pineal glands to experience divinity in a different way. It's like, oh no, we can't do that. So bam, Nixon's like, this is your brain on drugs and it's melting in the pan. Watch it. You guys remember that?
No, I'm too young.
You've already dated yourself. We all know you're old.
So I remember that it occurs to me something I'm always like trying to play around with, like, what does this really mean?
Yeah.
Something hit me that's never hit me before, Chris. And I'm going to use Chris for both of you because it kind of works. But what if it's more basic? I almost wish that it's like, oh yeah, we've been holding out on you guys. We know that this is more connective and universally fulfilling. What if it's worse? What if, and I've always wondered about whether or not the people in charge are really also asleep.
Oh my gosh. So that was where I was actually, so I was going to circle back to that exact thing. Go ahead. Keep going. No, you go.
No.
I'm so excited about what you're going to say. Say it.
What if they too discovered the technology and are too dumb to get what it actually means?
Yes. I think that's the answer. I think the people that are actually pulling the strings,
they don't know.
They actually are asleep and they don't know.
But they discover technology. They're like, well, that's our technology. We don't want to share it. And it's like, it's not just a technology. It's the way humans and consciousness and the way we were bioprogrammed.
It's the way the fabric of reality waves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think they're too dumb to actually get or see the full. I think there's a system to it, just like everything else, because I can't imagine the system for corporate America and collegiate and educational systems are much different than how they're operating on the backside in the clandestine government world, right?
Sure.
So there's no way that I think that they're open-minded or going, oh, this is some guy standing up going, I'm pretty sure it has to do with a collective human global consciousness that was once activated and we're all part of a bylaw. They would shoot that shit down in a second.
Right.
I don't know. Chris, what do you think?
That people don't know exactly that. I am constantly, you would think this is hysterical, but I don't know, maybe not. I think it's hysterical, but I am teaching people around the world their history, literally. Chinese
you are.
People, Welsh people, like Native Americans, they don't know it. They literally don't know it. It's incredible. So these people that you talk about that are running strings, I mean, it's kind of been a money motivator for so long, whether it's 100 families, 13 families, whatever it is, 500 people. I guess it's a money motivator, but it's once you make so much money, do you really need more money? It's power and control. And one step further than that, which gets very scary, is that they're trying to kill us all and enslave us all. And that becomes very probably what's going on. So.
So what do you think the point is? What's the point of killing and enslaving? What's the point?
Keep us dumb.
They use this 500 million number, that's the correct number to have on the planet, not 8 billion. And Bill Gates, his parents were eugenicists, and they that 500 million number is a number that they may be trying to get us to, and time will tell. So I never think of 50 years.
Yeah. Oh, don't say it. Don't say it.
I'm wondering.
Don't say it.
If there are certain plagues and diseases, no?
Just say, look, Chris, can I, for what you've spoken about, I'm not just, so I'm not ready for the car mom, okay?
Yes, of course.
I'm not ready
next time
for us to do this.
Next time.
And no, this time I'm cutting you off. Chris.
Yes.
For what we have not gotten to, which is a tragedy. You had filmed a documentary in Michigan about copper.
All right,
I know you guys can both laugh. You guys can both laugh. We have things to do and say over the next few years. You are not going to say what you were just about to say, and this can be that one.
But I think everybody
don't
take what you will. Take what you will.
Listen, Chris. We have a lot of things you and I to do.
Yes,
you're not going to wreck it.
Truth is,
I've already died once.
Okay, Ralph, I won't wreck it.
Ralph. Jeez Louise, wreck this.
Wreck it, Ralph.
Don't wreck it. Don't wreck it, Ralph.
No, Ralph. Wreck it, Ralph. It's a movie.
Wreck it, Ralph. I know what your reference was. Yeah, she looks good on film TikTok star.
Until next time. But truth is truth. And
don't say that.
Okay, so here's the thing. Back to it. You have filmed some interesting things in Michigan and some other places. Could you please talk a little bit about your film work?
I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Rockefeller. I'll tell you that if I can say 1 minute, 30 seconds on Rockefeller.
No, you can talk.
Hey, you can say whatever you want.
Oh, here we go.
I have to get my notes back. I had all these notes. Rockefeller, obviously such a ruthless guy. These people are all ruthless. His scientists, go to that convention and they develop the phrase fossil fuel, it's literally a Rockefeller scientist phrase. They're not fossils. They're not dinosaurs. That's not what our cars are being driven on. It's an oil that is constantly regenerating. It's constantly creating more. It's not a fossil fuel. It's not dinosaurs. But that was to create the scarcity, supply and demand that he did. The other one is, in addition to the schooling, which I love what you said, was the pharmaceuticals. Oh yeah. Yeah, the pharmaceutical. He got rid of all of the Eastern medicines to just have Western medicine. And then the final thing I wanted to say was his plastics. He invented plastics from the byproducts of the oil, which we all so. But these people are regarded as such heroes. So forgive me. I don't know if you have anything you want to say, and then I'll talk about the filming.
Kristi never has anything to say.
I have so many things to say all the time. And one is plastics are killing the planet.
That stuff's all inside of our bodies. The chemtrails spray poison down on us all the time. The old photos from the 80s, mid 90s, they don't have planes flying in the sky, creating X's and dropping chemicals down on us. So it's kind of a scary time.
It's a really scary time. Not to freak any of the listeners out.
You guys go for it.
We're not saying that this is the apocalypse. It's fine. Why are you shaking your head?
I think it's awesome.
It's reality. This is the reality that we live in, and this is the problem. This is the problem, is that people are ignoring the reality of what we're living in, and people just want to ignore it. People just want to say, you know what, I'm okay drinking my Coors Light and watching bull riding at night. You know what I mean?
Who are we
I
to say?
cannot get on board with that. It's just like there's got to be more. There has to be more. We're literally being poisoned on a daily basis. And then we wonder why we have cancer. And then what happens when we get cancer? We go to the pharmaceutical companies to fix us. And then the pharmaceutical companies make money. Well, my God, it's just one big circle of poisonous shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to sum it up by saying that's basically what's happening. They keep us sick. They keep us divided. They keep us ignorant. And as long as we're not asking questions, everything's okay. But when you get an uprising of questions, it becomes a problem.
You have a calling.
It becomes a problem. And then we have to spin it. And now that we have all of these people that are having spiritual awakenings, this isn't something that can be fought by society. This is not something that can be fought by the government. This isn't something that can be fought by the powers, by the theys that are out there, whoever they are. This isn't something that can be fought. This is an innate awakening inside of humanity. And we are searching for answers. And there are certain people who won't be silenced. There are certain people who are going to continue to speak out and continue to seek and continue to wonder and demand transparency. And I think that the longer the powers that be, or whoever it is pulling the strings, go without addressing this, it's going to become a mess for them. Because I don't think that as much as they think they are in control, when it comes to innate awakenings inside of us, spiritual awakenings, that is far beyond their control. It's far beyond their control. So eventually they're going to be bombarded with spiritualists. They're going to be bombarded with people demanding answers, demanding transparency, demanding truth, people seeing through the veil, seeing through the bullshit. And when that happens, it's going to be a huge problem. And I think that's what we're facing right now, is we have enough people standing up saying, hey, why are we paying so much in taxes? And where's our tax money going? We have so many people standing up and saying, hey, why the politics, why does the landscape look like this when it shouldn't? Like what's happening here? When it comes to religion, we have people saying, wait a minute, I feel oppressed and I really don't understand why, and then they start seeking answers and they want to know what it is they're feeling and where it's coming from. All of these are innate awakenings inside of us. When you roll over and look at your partner one day and you think like, no, like just that enough. That alone is enough to go, okay, something is changing in me. And so I think that we're getting all of these things where people are looking at their lives and looking at their lifestyle and looking at the people in their lives and realizing that they're craving things that are deeper. They're craving things that have substance. I think there are a lot of people out there that are waking up to the reality around us and they're realizing that there's more to it, that we're missing a connection that we need to recover. And I think that through the quest of understanding who we are and where we come from, and that involves looking at, megalithic structures and all of these ancient ruins that are sprinkled in the jungles and the mountains and all over the landscape across the globe. We have to slow down and pull ourselves apart from our daily lives and look at the bigger picture and try to understand like what we're doing here. What's the mission? Where do we come from? Because we know we're connected.
What were you going to say, Chris?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Just quickly, I guess it's okay if people don't want to face, and just want to put their head in the sand. Like, that's okay. Like, who am I to say you should do something one way or another? But, the food that we consume and the water with with what's in the water, just destroying our pineal gland, the fluoride, and the food that we eat being poisoned, just it's a bad reality. So I know we have a couple minutes. I just wanted to finish. Is there any last thoughts or anything that you guys want to talk about?
I feel like you get the last thought. I think that I've basically monopolized this show with all of my thoughts this morning. I woke up on a kick, I guess.
I love it. Kristi, I love it. And Jared, this has been perfect and wonderful. We didn't get to talk, this was just perfect in trying to actually, like, what can we do? What can we do? And with this information, how can we help? And what a great topic. So just to wrap up the copper thing really quick, is that conference, which is having its 20th annual conference, first week of October, AAPS, Ancient Artifact Preservation Society. These guys, for 20 years, most of them are dead now. They knew that this copper went somewhere, that this whole thing was filled with copper, all on the ground, veins of copper, it's all gone. So the Indians say, it used to be here and it's gone. Where did it go? You then go over to Europe and the Mediterranean, and they say, basically, where'd all this copper come from? Because there's no chance, zero chance, that the copper that is in Europe and the Mediterranean could have fueled the Bronze Age. It's not possible. The copper had to have come from Michigan. The science is right now saying that these bronze artifacts, Europe and Mediterranean, theoretically, test enough of them, a lot of them are going to be showing very specific elements that pinpointed exactly to Michigan copper. And that's very simple. Boats were going back and forth, trading and bringing copper. That's not difficult. That's just super easy. It cannot be from the European, because that copper is not pure enough. It takes way too much time. It takes way too much time and way too much energy, and it can't be done. You have to have pure copper from Michigan, 99.5% pure. You cannot use 0.5% pure ore in the Mediterranean. You'd have to denude entire forests to melt that stone to get the tiny bit of copper out of it. And so mercury, uranium, some of these osmium, some of these metals are only found in the mid-continental rift of Michigan, this one spot in the world where this 500 million pounds of copper came up out of the ground, 99.5% pure. And that's what you need for the Bronze Age. You don't need ore in Spain that you have to denude a whole forest to get this much copper out of. You just carry a, so that's it. And science is ignoring this story, obviously. So
That's what
You didn't explain it this way to me. This is huge.
I'm sorry. Next time.
Chris, this is huge. This is huge. You didn't explain it this way. You didn't say this to me.
This is
You didn't say this is the one place on the planet this comes from. You didn't say that.
Yes, I did.
No,
I said
you didn't.
Michigan cop.
You said Michigan copper, but you didn't say this is the one planet, or this is the one place on the planet this comes from.
Chris, in
Yes,
real
sir.
time,
Yes.
one of the things I absolutely enjoy and love about Kristi,
Here we go.
Yeah.
you know what, for everyone listening, and this is something I want everyone to love about you, truly, is that one, she is smart, she's brilliant, but there's not a but to the smart part or the brilliant part.
You just said but.
Okay, right. So let me rephrase, because in real time, because this will be recorded for in perpetuity, right? The reality is that you, and for all those, I'm encouraging people who are waking up and or comprehending the complexities of the world to like take this as a real example. What you just got, but you get it. Like you actually get what Chris gets, what I get. You got it in real time. And I think this is really encouraging to people who are just figuring themselves out.
I'm not just figuring myself out.
No.
What the hell are you implying?
I'm not talking about you figuring it out. The actualization of the weight of the copper being strictly from Michigan.
That's because normal people on the planet don't know anything
Right.
about
Yeah.
the existence of copper
Yes.
and where it exists from and in what quantities. Normal people on the planet don't know anything about where copper comes from or the consistency or the quantity or any of that.
Okay, we got to.
Normal people on the planet don't know this.
Does
stuff.
everyone? Do you mind if we go a couple extra minutes?
No?
Okay.
I think you should ask Chris.
Chris, do you mind if we go a few
okay.
extra minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So there's two things. One, I want to throw something up for both of you, but do you want to go a little more into the detail about how significant the copper find is and what you did with it and the documentary that you can you go a little bit into it?
Yeah, tell us about that.
I'll just really quickly. So we had Caltech analyze the results that these other two labs, the two most famous labs in the world, did. Like, we had a friend of mine who's in the Explorers Club. He gave it to the head scientist of Caltech, and they had never heard this stuff. And so if the head scientists of Caltech don't know the stuff that I know about, then 8 billion people don't. And so
exactly. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. You're welcome, Kristi.
Thank you.
Jared's mean.
I know. That was rude. And it's slightly condescending, but he'll apologize later. It'll be fine.
That's literally the opposite of any of my points.
Anyway.
You're just finding yourself, no, I'm kidding. So and the way that this story happened. So for 20 years, they've been doing this conference, and he was the mayor of Marquette, Fred Reedholm, and he wrote this book called Michigan Copper that's now selling for $1,000 if you can find a copy. But they were doing what they had with the science of the time. So they had no science. They knew this story. They showed all, the best science they could. They all the evidence of the copper, and and then he dies in the early 2000s. But this equipment, the scientific microscopes, 30 years ago they went down to parts per million. They are now going down to parts per billion. That few drops of water in a swimming pool. So they are able to go down to the atomic level and literally this great awakening that you're talking about. And that was not able to have been done 20, 30 years ago. So that's it. Nobody knows this story.
And why aren't we talking about it? That's like, why I feel like that this should be blowing up right now.
Well, it will be, maybe. Academia will fully ignore it. They have to. And then are you a scientist or are you not? Like, right. These are the best scientific labs in the world, and they're saying that this stuff is in there, mercury and osmium and uranium, and that's not found in any old world copper. The only way that could have been there, mercury, it comes up naturally out of the ground in Michigan. It's the only chance. Otherwise, mercury would easily boil off at 500 degrees when they're doing that in the ore in Europe. So these are smoking gun proofs. The scientific labs respect us. They're very interested. But yeah, nobody knows this stuff. So yeah.
Well, what are you doing with it from a documentarian standpoint?
I've gotten huge. I tried to relay this information on Twitter, and so you can pay $50 and get 50,000 people to look at something, or at least that's the numbers they give you. It's like an ad. So I paid $100. You could get 100,000 people to theoretically look at these type of things. Full support from every single person around the entire world that looked at this. Not one had anything negative. But it's the ignoring by the academia, the ignoring by the archaeologists.
So then do you have like an answer? Do you have a solution to the problem? If we need to disseminate information, if we need to put information out there, if we need to share with the masses, and we can't do it, and we want to disseminate the truth, and we can't do it through academia, and we can't do it through the media. How do we do it?
It's organic. It takes time. One person at it, we've definitely gotten hundreds of thousands of people to at least look at this story, like just through paying some people on Twitter, somehow hundreds of thousands. We rammed it in there. Literally, like once I got the results, it was just like the people are going to hear about this. Right. Mm-hmm. So it takes time. Media, I think, is the best way, but it takes time. And is this going to be known about in 1 year, 2 years, 5, 10, 100? I don't know. But I'm trying to figure it out. And that's why I'm asking you guys questions too, on how you see this awakening happening. So,
well, before we answer, or before we even address that, Chris, can you explicitly explain a little more to people who are listening to this podcast? You did the research. So there's already, so just to set the stage, all of a sudden about a week ago, I start getting Tom Elmore, our other partner, and who I spoke with at the conference you and I met at. I am inundated by mails from co-friends, and I'm forwarding this stuff to Kristi, that this article is out, that this research was done. No one understands that I know you. Can you explain? I want you to toot your horn a little bit. This whole thing is happening because of you.
Well, that's crazy. All right, so I
Sorta.
can respond to that. No, you're so
not,
right.
not trying to put you on a pedestal, but I just want you to, I don't want you to hold back or abbreviate your involvement. And I want you to explain a little more to people that you are involved in all this.
That's very nice, Jared. Thank you tremendously. You're definitely my biggest fan for sure with something like that.
I am one of your biggest fans.
I can say this unequivocally, certainly. I was a part of it. Some could say I was near the center, but I'm a part of it. But what I can say is that a force came through to all of us and made this thing happen. There's no doubt about it. This was not me. This was not the person that donated the artifacts. This was not the scientific lab that agreed to do it, or the fact that a partner lived right next to the university. This was just sit back and just let the force and the flow happen around you. And that's literally what this test was.
God, I love that. That's beautiful, because that's transferable to every area of our life. Like when you're a spiritual being and you are fully aware of your own reality, then you just accept these things, and you're able to sit back and just like let these things happen around you and let the universe work. You put it out there and let the universe work. And that sounds like it's what you did. And it looks like it was a beautiful thing to watch. Like what he just said was, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of work that goes into the back end of things, but you get to a certain point that you've done your job and you just sit back and you let the universe do the rest. And then you get to see the beauty of it.
And these were ideas of people around me that had nothing to do with me.
Right.
So I'm sitting back there kind of, connecting a few, and then somebody has the thought, Rick Osman, he says, let's call our friend Jay Wakefield, who has all these Bell Beaker bronze axes, and let's get these tested. So Jay sends Bell Beaker bronze axes. They then punch little holes into it. That gets extracted out and sent to the best lab in the world in Sweden. They then say, we taught the Swedes. The Swedes had no idea about the purity of Michigan copper. These are Viking descendants.
That's
These
crazy.
are Viking descendants, like Denmark, Sweden. They should know about the purity of copper in Michigan.
How do they not know?
This is crazy.
How do they not know?
It's crazy.
This makes no sense.
They don't know. They learned, and they were very impressed. And so then those test results show these parts per billion of elements that should not be in that bronze, that couldn't be there, that they would have burned off at 500 degrees if you're creating ore in Europe. So,
but there it exists.
But how?
Keep going. I know you're processing, but
I am.
For those listening, she's processing, and I'm giving you one more second to process.
You'd think people would know this stuff. You'd think our academics would be at the forefront of knowledge and science.
Chris,
and
what I'm wondering. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
You're excited now.
What I'm wondering, I don't understand how the people from the Bronze Age or since then, how we haven't ask the question,
Mm.
where did this come from? Like, why are we, it's 2025. The Bronze Age was a long damn time ago.
3,500, 4,000 plus years ago.
Why is this a surprise? Why is this already not known? Why is this a surprise? I don't understand.
That's one of the questions, right? And that relates to knowledge filtration, which is what Cremo has talked about it with us. But you're watching it happen in real time.
I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
And by the way, just for everyone listening, we are fortunate to know. I know Jay Wakefield from the conference. You do too, and from your work. We're fortunately going to have Jay on. We're going to have him interview. We are going to talk to Jay exactly about these things, but it's such a vast subject of what we're now discussing at the nth hour of the show, right? So yeah, as far as your opinion and your observation, your experience, you get, for everyone listening, you get copper axes that are clearly Michigan copper. So there's two parts. One is, who are the beakers? Now, Crichton Miller, I don't know if you know Crichton Miller. Crichton Miller is in Scotland. His DNA shows that he's 95% beaker.
Oh.
Crichton took the Christian cross, created a patented, a lot of times there's a Christian cross with a circle behind it. He theorized that the way that they were navigating the beakers was an instrument that could be used day or night. That was actually, and the definition of church has to do with a scientific process, not religion or mysticism. It has to do with a scientific process. But he was theorizing that there was a very mechanical way that if you take the cross and if you take this system, it would allow you to navigate night or day within a couple nautical miles anywhere in the world. And he published this 20 years ago, Chris, and we'll talk about it offline. But here we have actual Michigan copper in Jay Wakefield's collection, and he's building a museum for everyone listening, which is not wanted by academia. They do not want him to build a museum. And as your point, when you say the conference people are dying off, Jay is in his 70s. I don't want to ruin it for him because he's a young, spunky 70s. And he is, and so he gives you these artifacts, and you team do what?
The best lab, Bethlehem, Lehigh University, half German, half foreign students, German university type thing. Best scientific lab in the country for this type of thing. They made destructive testing on Jay's pieces. They drill in a hole, and these are bronze pieces. One of them was a copper axe. We didn't know that. We tested 3 bronze pieces of Jay's. These were his bottom pieces. These were his pieces he didn't care about. One of those 3 pieces happens to be 99.9% pure copper.
Stop
This is like, so without even looking at the testing of the 2 other bronze pieces, just forget those other 2. Just this one piece that he thought was nothing is 99%. It's a copper axe head. It's not a bronze axe head. It's a copper axe head. So that's rare, but it's that pure of copper. That would make that a priceless history changing artifact. Just that one piece. Forget whatever else is ever
just
tested.
a junk piece.
But wait a minute. Okay, so hold on a second. Hold on. Pull the brakes.
Her gums are champing now.
So hold on a second. Okay, you guys are just getting a little out there. So
facts.
How do we know that Michigan is the only place on earth that we can get this pure of copper? How do we know that there aren't other places on earth, or and they just haven't been discovered yet? Like, how do we know that this is the place? Like, how do we know that there aren't other places?
Chris, that is a great question. Chris, can you answer it?
Yes, we do know that answer, and people have worked on that for many decades, a century and a half, that question. We know the copper mines in Europe, Spain, and there's one in near the tin of Cornwall, but there's a few specific copper mines that they know about in Europe. You're dealing with 0.5% purity. So you're dealing with copper is in an ore. So copper is mixed with a rock. So you chunk this rock out in Europe and it's got a little bit of copper in it. You've got to tear down all these trees, light that rock on fire to melt out a little bit of copper. That's how they say the whole Bronze Age happened. And it has to get so hot to melt that stone, to get so hot, so many trees, forests destroyed. Or you just do trade. You just do ships, natural ocean currents, the whole oceans, everywhere on the planet. You get in a bathtub, you will end up on the other side in all of the currents. You just get in your vessel and you will eventually get there. Whether you're alive or dead is another matter, but it's easy. This is the big crux of the whole thing that got me 15 years ago, was that these oceans are not barriers. They are super highways. And until the day I die, I will defend that, and I can prove that. And the evidence is so overwhelming that everybody was sailing on these oceans before Columbus and before the Vikings. But that is the big thing that academics cannot do. That's the one thing. This is your answer to why this is. They cannot say there was any contact before Columbus and the Vikings. A little, you maybe can kind of say maybe a little Pacific Ocean, Polynesians, but this is the answer. This is a land claim issue with the United States that the Pope in the 1100s issued the Terra Novellis papal doctrine, and that said you cannot take any land that is owned by Christians or that has any Christians on it, even though there were Christians already in America. So that gave him the legal authority to take the savage land, and you cannot do anything that goes against that papal bull. Otherwise, you're dealing with a land claim issue with manifest destiny. It's an incredible story. So they have to put down all of their ancestors. They have to say all of their ancestors were dumb, that they could not have had boats. And here's the final thing I'll say. What would it do to the African schoolboy if he learns that his ancestors came to the Americas, not just as slaves, but as merchants, navigators, and kings? What would that do to that boy, to inspire him, that girl, to be great? But it's not just the Atlantic. It's Asia and all of India. And they all came here. They all bred with everything. So it's a big story. Thank you for letting me vent. And we know it's Michigan copper because that's the only place on the planet where it's above 99.5% pure. In order to get,
But how do we know that's the only place on the planet? Because like we're constantly making these new discoveries, right? Whether it's bones or ruins or whatever, we're constantly making new discoveries. So how do we know that that's the only place on the entire planet that it exists? Like, that seems like a stretch for me to believe that.
I'm gonna, Chris, I want you to speak to it,
go ahead.
I'm going to say a little bit about it.
Sure.
Thank God, unfortunately, I can't believe I'm saying this. Thank God for human capitalism. So the people, say you're in the mining business or the oil business, and you already know from LiDAR experience that they keep track of their stuff.
Sure.
The geologists involved in making it a profitable business have tested everywhere on the planet to find the purity, to find what they need. What is it going to cost me and you think of the Harvard situation. You and I own a copper mine. How?
So I'll just save us all time here by saying there's really nothing that you can tell me that's going to change my mind. And this is the reason why.
Oh my God.
Because we're constantly making new scientific discoveries that we didn't know existed, whether it's in the cosmos or on the earth. We're constantly making discoveries that prior to that discovery was non-existent. We couldn't believe it to be, right? We couldn't believe it to be. Because it hasn't been discovered yet. Okay.
I like your challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the challenge is right now, Michigan is the only hotspot that we know of for this amount of pure copper. But how do we know that there is the literal it's like, to me, saying that, making that statement that Michigan is the only hot spot for this pure of copper, right? That statement to me sounds like saying we're the only beings in the universe.
I like her challenge on this, Chris. I'm going to try to field this one more time before I let you.
Thank you.
You're probably
Good
the
job,
better.
Kristi. Good job.
Help me if I'm off on this, or well, help me with the whole thing. But here's what I think you need to know. Chris mentioned mercury. He mentioned, so when they test a metallurgy and they say it has this much copper, it has this much mercury, and it has this much this and that and the other, it's not just like they took a cake from Target and they took a cake from Walmart and they did some testing and went, well, this one came from Walmart and this one came because it has this much sugar and this much that. When we say a thumbprint has a unique thing, so the metallurgy of the copper from specifically Michigan has such a unique footprint that to find any other copper in the world, it's not just the level of purity, it's the complexity is a unique thumbprint. Would that be accurate, Chris?
Okay, so that makes things different, but how do we also then not know that this thumbprint that exists in, so let's just say my thumbs are disassociated from my body, and this thumbprint
graphically just graphic.
This thumbprint is in
1,000 miles that way,
Michigan.
Yeah, okay.
But this other thumb, while they seem only they can stretch this far, right? But let's just say they can stretch to opposite sides of the planet.
All right.
And here's one in Michigan, and then here's one in South Africa. So how do we not know that it's just not discovered yet? That's my point. My point is, yes, I understand that there's a unique thumbprint. But here's a thumb and here's a thumb, and it's on the same body, right? So the purity would be close to the same, if not exactly the same. It would be close to the same. So how do we not know that this thumb and this thumb isn't part of the same body on other sides of the planet?
Chris, I think this is the part where you take over about the testing.
I'll do the best I can. Look up the mid-continental rift, that geological feature that extends in the middle of the U.S. there up to the Michigan area. It's a very small area where this copper came up out of the ground. So it's mid-continental rift. That's the only place on the planet that we know where this geological feature happened, where copper just came up mixed with silver, and is there, ready on the ground, flow copper, ready for people to just haul down, put on the boat. Then once you've taken out all the stuff, the flow copper on the surface, then you start to mine it. Then you start to go down and you see these veins. You see this copper vein and you literally go and mine it until the vein stops. There's a huge vein under the water. It's like, I don't know if it's huge veins of copper up there under the water, but only there. There might be an asteroid made of gold, I don't know if you've heard about that, but, circling around, but it's the only place they know that and to get copper above 99.5%, the only way you can do that. So it's all that purity in Michigan. It's easy. Mix that with 10% tin. You've got the strongest bronze in the world before the Iron Age. Why would you have 80% pure copper? You want 99.5% pure. That's the best bronze. That with 10% tin. The tin either came from Cornwall or it came from a place in South America. But in order to get copper to 99.5% purity, their story is that we got all this copper from Europe, Mediterranean. You cannot get copper above 99.5% purity without electrolysis. It is impossible. That means anything that you find above 99.5 is Michigan copper, unless electrolysis was used after they had denuded the forests, melted this down, somehow created this 99.5% pure piece of copper, took them all month, mixed it with some tin, but they would have to use electrolysis to get it above 99.5, which means that they would have had laser advanced ancient technologies to somehow do that. The answer is forget all that. Forget all that. There aren't even enough trees in the forests of Europe and Mediterranean to do this. So forget all that. And all you have to do is protect your nuclear codes, which are your trading routes. They didn't need a cross on a piece of paper. That might have worked. I should know that story. But they used longitude, latitude from, you can do this. The ancient sailing methods, my friend, Dr. James P. Shears, Professor Emeritus at Madison, has surveyed 1,000 Indian mounds. The ancients knew how to sail across the seas with 2 chain links. That's all they needed. So you don't need maps. These are nuclear codes. These are secrets. If you were the Bill Gates of the day, you would have never told anybody where those mines in Michigan were. You would have never done that. You would have told nobody, because as soon as your ships are constantly coming back, you're as rich as anybody on the planet. The final thing I'll say is that we had to teach this story to basically the Phoenicians, at least the Phoenicians we were dealing with. They didn't know this story, which was just unbelievable.
That's insane. That's insane. They didn't know this story. And again, let's just be hypothetical. 3,500 years ago, what would it take for you to have electrolysis?
You tell me.
I mean, no, and seriously, for a mental exercise for people to understand, Chris, what kind of technology would it take 3,500 years ago for them to do this process?
Advanced, right? Yeah.
Right.
So we would assume they wouldn't have it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But what if they did?
That's not, they did. I'm sure they did. But this copper story, it's the simplest, easy phrase is, it's so easy to do the oceans. It's so easy. And then when you can prove it with the science of testing it, it's an open and shut case.
Right. What you're talking about, the metallurgy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're telling me, so what you're claiming, and you can definitely disclaim it, but what you're claiming is that the Bronze Age was only made doable because of the copper from Michigan.
Yes.
Okay. That's bold.
Well, scientifically tested by the best lab in the world in Sweden.
Yes.
Yeah, I still feel like that's very bold. That's a super, and maybe I just, this is part of when you don't know everything, you know what I mean? And you're learning little bits here and there. Yeah. And you're putting the pieces of all the things together. It's like, let me talk consciousness all day long and I got you. But when we start digging into archaeology and things, it takes me just a minute, and I'm also the devil's advocate. And
what a great thing to watch us, this is what will happen when we try to tell this to somebody that's never heard this. So what great feedback and questions. How great. So thank you.
Well, I think that's part of, no, thank you. Like, you're the one you're the guest. You keep thinking us, but you're the guest. So no, every time you think me, I'm naturally like, no, thank you. No, thank you. No, Chris, thank you. But really, I hate to be devil's advocate here, but I think we might have lost him.
Chris, we might have lost you.
But at the same time, do we have it or no?
I don't know. Okay, ask the question
there
first.
He is. But at the same time, it's like, I know you guys keep saying it just points to this one specific location on the planet, but I'm just thinking the planet is really large. And that's like saying that we're the only existence in the cosmos. Like, this is the only one and only location on the entire planet that this copper exists. I understand that to date, that's what we know, right? To date, that's what we know. But it's sort of like disproving Einstein or Darwin. It's sort of like, let's just give it time. And with enough time and enough accumulation of knowledge and testing, then we're going to understand maybe it's different than the way we've always understood it.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Let me tee up Chris, I want you to answer it, but let me tee this up for you. So they already theorized that in order to create this pure of copper, they would have had to cut so many trees, and they would have. Chris, we have the same feedback, by the way. But the what they would do is they would have to burn so many trees to get the copper at so many levels in order for the mercury. But the mercury, like these fires would be like at a minimum 700-900 degrees, but likely 2,000 degrees. Like you can't, just for people to know, to burn out a human body, you need to be over 1,500-1,800 degrees.
Sure.
So this
Why would you know that?
Well, I was fascinated about.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, in order to burn out the impurities and the mercury, there's an elimination factor right there, right? So, what they've already done within Europe is they've told a story about, hey, in order to have pure copper, we would have had to burn so many forests and so many things. And so rather than addressing the amount of trees, all they said is, well, if you get a fire this hot, you would get rid of the mercury, you would melt the stone, and you would have copper. But the copper, being pure, had the mercury in it, had these other signatures because they didn't have to burn it. Mm-hmm. Now, hypothetically, what you're saying is, I'm in agreement with you. Like, how can we be skeptical about this? And Chris, this is where we tie you in, right? The theory would be okay, they found a massive fissure within Europe, and they dug, and all the copper of the Bronze Age came from this 99.5% pure fissure that is not the copper fissure or the Michigan fissure. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that's continental. It's a fissure that doesn't just go. It goes in, and as you pointed out, it goes underwater in Michigan, in the Great Lakes. It goes into Michigan. It continues, right? But Chris, based on what I'm saying, do you want to explain to people how then a fissure was not found or wasn't available in similarity within Europe itself? So the known trade routes between 3,500 and 4,000 years ago, let's say we didn't know all the trade routes, right? So of the known, where they would have grabbed copper for Africa, Europe, and the, in quotes, Bronze Age that we know of. Can you speak to that now a little bit, Chris?
Just the only thing I want to say is that we have known this theoretically for a long time, but science could not answer it, that you can literally fingerprint a copper piece that you find over there to a specific mine, a specific area in Michigan, like literally fingerprint it precisely back. Now these bronze pieces.
And this is a consistent testing, right? This is consistent. Like this is tested Michigan, tested Michigan, tested Michigan. Like it all points to Michigan. Is that right? Or
to your question, I think for everyone listening, what Kristi is exactly saying is tested Europe, tested Russia, tested China. Yes. You're saying that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm saying like tested in all of these places, they all point to Michigan. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
So we are the first to test anything. There's a few groups testing stuff, but they don't allow bronze pieces in museums to be tested for this reason, probably. So we're at the forefront of testing artifacts.
Exactly what I'm saying, which is there's no way to prove or disprove Michigan. There's no way to prove or disprove that the iron being tested or the iron that we have is coming from Michigan.
The copper.
The copper. I'm sorry, the copper, not iron, copper. Like the copper that we have, like there's no way to prove or disprove it. It's like you're saying about thumbprints. Like, yeah, this thumbprint's here. That's fine. That's cool if you can link the thumbprint from here to there. But otherwise, if there's no way to prove that this copper comes from this specific mine in Michigan over and over and over again, then that's sort of like the scientific. You can't prove a scientific point if every single random thing you're testing, if it's not a random test pointed to the same thing, and you're pulling test subjects from this thing and testing it to see if it matches this thing, then it's going to match this thing. But if it's random, if it's sparse, if it's spread, if it's random testing from all over the world that points to Michigan, that's one thing. But if it's test things that are assumingly coming from Michigan, then of course they're going to match Michigan.
I like your reasoning for a number of reasons, because I can see people listening to this and not quite fully comprehending how significant this is. So Chris, I want to tee you up again.
So maybe that's where we need to go is maybe laser focus on how we know for sure. Like, what is because every time you guys come back at me, and this is just me being devil's advocate, but every time Chris, you, and Jared, every time you guys come back at me with, well, this points to Michigan, the devil's advocate in me says, what if reality is different?
Chris, I think she's actually, what do you want to just answer it?
I would answer that. What a great lesson too, that I need to better explain things, because I am certainly not an expert, but I have friends and smart people around me that could tell this to you better, that could explain it to you better. And so I'll do the best I can to try to explain things, but
thank you.
Love the questions. And so this is the beginning of testing. I can confidently say that if 1,000 pieces were tested, that some of them are going to show Michigan copper, not all of them, because in the Bronze Age, you had pieces that were melted over and over, and impurities of things mixed in. Those wouldn't be good. Those would, once the Iron Age happened, you don't need those bronze pieces anymore. They get melted. But a lot of pieces are not multiple, they didn't go through multiple processes of melting. So those are the ones we're looking for, kind of and there'd be thousands of these pieces. I mean, you go into these museums, there's so much bronze in the back of these museums. Just test it. That's all we need to do, is just test any pieces. We got 3 of the best labs in the world who basically had no idea, that had never seen some of these elements in copper before. They had no idea. These scientists, these labs, they're like osmium. They're like, that's weird. We've never had any idea that was in copper. Well, here it is. Here's where we started with. We have 2,000 books about pre-Columbian contact overseas. This is a topic for the last several hundred years that very passionate people have written about. All groups coming here, you name it. I could rattle the names for about 2 minutes. Every single group you could think about, most of them coming here, having contact here before Columbus, before the Vikings. That's the big thing that they had to keep secret, that these highways, these were barriers, these oceans. But they, you start with all of this research that's been done by hundreds of researchers over 200 years. They've written books, Phoenicians, Africans, Chinese, Bell Beakers, all these groups coming here. There's so much evidence to what I'm talking about, that this one new study, which we just somehow came across like a few weeks ago, like, you don't just need that story as the evidence. That is all of a sudden like, holy God, what has happened here? There's so much evidence of this stuff that we're talking about in addition to that, that I just wanted to make that point. So whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the points, just listening to the way you're communicating about it, and I think we're resolving something while we're podcasting too, or while we're talking about this, and your question, I think one of the things she's looking for, and by the way, I think it's what all of the audience and all of us are looking for, is a explanation for, again, not everyone has to be an expert, but if you were to speak to the difference between, for instance, there's a couple things you said. One was there are other there are other copper tools that have not been tested from the Bronze Age that date to, we're talking about, for everyone listening, 3,500, 4,000, 3,500, 32 to 4,000 years ago, and maybe even older. But because those trade routes, it's very likely, not theoretically, but it's very likely that people have been coming to and from America on these routes for a very, very, like, an indefinite amount of time.
Way before Columbus.
Yeah, way before Columbus. But for you, I would like you to, like, readdress whether, so say it's Sweden and they test an axe and it's from somewhere else. It's just in Europe. Why would they know that the axe is from Europe versus why would they know the axe is from Michigan?
Well, the Indians supposedly did know metallurgy, even though that's entirely untrue. They were smelting iron in Ohio at Fort Hill and certainly other places. So the Indians were doing metallurgy. So these are old world axes. They're not Michigan axes. They're not what the Indians were supposedly doing. These are bell beaker axes. They have bell beaker symbols and inscriptions and latitude indicators and longitude indicators and lozenges, and there's encoded with navigation information on these bronze bell beaker axe heads. The bell beakers were the metal traders. That was their job. They were 7 feet tall. The women were 6 feet tall. They very possibly could have been the precursors to the Adena culture. Also 7 feet men, 6 feet women. Much different than Hopewell being 5 feet. So, you know, and the copper trade began 9,600 years ago. That's when the ice started melting and revealing all of this copper that was just on the ground, the float copper. So you can say this, 9,600 years ago is when the copper extraction started in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So whether that's Atlanteans after Atlantis gets destroyed, or whoever these giants were, or whatever, 9,600 years ago is when that copper started to be extracted as that ice was melting. So then go forward 5,000 years, 7,000 years, then you're talking about, you know, kind of this Phoenician, bell beaker, mass extraction. So there's, you know, these timelines get so enormous that it can be fun. So
and confused. I think that happens too. I think the timelines get confused.
And Crichton Miller, who we interviewed, he pointed out he mentions it casually. He said, first off, prior to the interview, which we'll post, he talked about being 95% beaker. He mentioned in the interview sitting there. Do you remember him saying, like, I'm 6'3" or 4 or something? He's like super tall guy. He wasn't, I don't even think it was 6'3". I think it was like 6'5", but he was talking about how tall he was. I'm like, beaker.
Nice, good. That's a great find. I like that.
Yeah. And his navigational method that he patented and rediscovered and wrote a book on 20 years ago was to point out how simple, and he himself is a sailor and he himself is a knight and has looked into this technology for decades. And the entire point was that the beaker culture was clearly traveling to America and everywhere. And they had the technology to do it in a lot simpler fashion than what's understood about sailing. And in a way that he reinvented. And
I think it's important to also note that, like, it seems as though the United States has been like the center of everything. You know what I mean? Like, we've just been the center of everything. What in politics and media, whatever it is. Like, we're just the
way to bring it forward.
We're just the center of everything.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's scary. I think it's terrifying, you know, like when you're that country, it's like nobody talks about New Zealand. You know what I mean?
Shout out to New Zealand.
They're probably the safest country on the globe.
By the way, we're on the podcast to New Zealand, just so you know. Hi, everybody.
Nobody talks about New Zealand, you know, like there's a country there that nobody talks about. They're probably totally safe and everything's fine there. They're not ever involved in political wars or religious wars, or you just never hear about them. It's like Switzerland, you know, they're just not involved in the political landscape. And so I think that all of this, just all of it, everything, whether it's copper in the ground or the past or megalithic structures or any of it, it all just comes back to like, what's happening and how do we figure it out? And what's the truth? And how do we get the truth out there? How do we get the truth out there without getting shut down? Or how do we plant the seed? How do we share it? How do we share the actual history? You know, where the copper comes from, like how the copper gets from point A to point B, and how trade works, and how people use the oceans, and how do we get the information out? Because the history books don't share this. This isn't commonly known knowledge. You know what I mean? This isn't something that the history books, we're not going to school. We're not sending our kids to school. We didn't go to school learning these things. And so now we're having to learn history outside of when you're learning history. You know, we go to school for a reason. We're going to school to learn, to get a foundation, to know these things about our history. But history is constantly changing based on new discoveries. But we don't necessarily accept all of those changes. We pick and choose what we accept. We pick and choose what's acceptable based on how well it'll integrate in society, how well it correlates with religious or political values or goals. You know, if you're political or religious, you know, I think we get all this new information and then we have to determine how we're going to use it. And this is no different. This copper information is no different than a new discovery of a megalithic structure, or, you know, ruins in the middle of a jungle and uncovering crystal skulls or artifacts or things like that. This is not anything different than that. It is, here's the science. Here's what we've discovered. Now, what do we do with the information? How do we disseminate it? And how do we adjust the history books?
Well, Chris, what's been your experience with the feedback? It's just all happened in the last couple of weeks. What's been your the realizations of the world? What's been the fallout in the last couple of weeks?
A full ignore by academia, which welcome to just, you know, our world is a full ignore.
Epic.
It's an intentional ignore, though.
What's that?
It's intentional. That's intentional. Do you feel as though it's intentional?
Of course.
Yeah. What do you do with that?
Great question.
I think of ways to defeat it.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
I'm open to ideas. I'm not ready to accept that this will all not be known in our lifetimes. I'm not ready to accept that. So I think that if we do our work, that they will be forced to confront these. So Michael Cremo, just really quickly, you've talked to him. His story was the most motivating, best story I've ever heard on a legend doing a legendary, just thinking and planning. He wrote his book.
Yep.
He received all the letters in response from the people. He knew he was going to publish that second book with all of the letters, all the responses. So he knew he was going to do that before he published it.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he forced a reply by academia. He forced it. And he sent that book to everywhere. And he was ready for them to respond, and he could answer any response. And it led to getting on NBC. And then they had to try to backtrack. But what a motivating story. What a plan that forced the mainstream to look at his science. All he said, just look at my science and talk about the science.
He was literally, for those that don't know, 700 examples of archaeological finds, of paleoanthropological collegiate finds of human antiquity. He denotes it all in a 1,000-page book, which is a seminal work for forbidden archaeology. He then ends up being invited to join the International Archaeological Congress. So not only do they not beat him, they acknowledge what he did and invited him to be a part of the Archaeological International Congress. And since then, he has, of course, continued writing. He's been a friend. He lectured and sat alongside me at the Preservation Society last year. And I think it's fucking language. Oh, wait, I can say that. We're on a podcast. We can say whatever we want. It's brilliant what he's done. But you're in the same boat. So I like that you credit Michael. But this is really, Chris, about you. You've accomplished something that no one in academia would face. You've done it.
Thank you. I'll just to conclude, just Cremo, that story inspired me on, an actual way to force a response. But Cremo, I didn't know that about the archaeological organization. He is 100% ignored, 100%, I was going to say laughed at, but just not even laughed at, just 100% ignored. So, wow, what a hero, what great work. He is ignored. And if you ask anybody in academia about Michael Cremo, they will say kook, clown, fraud, loser, pseudo. I mean, that's what they'll say about the guy.
But that's the common denominator for all people that are awake moving forward. Yes. That's what everybody is labeled as. And so for me, if anybody is labeled as a kook or a guru or a woo-woo, whatever, that's the person I'm looking at, because that's a person that probably has answers. That's a person that's probably not programmed. So I think that just like Michael Cremo versus other authors, and I'm not going to name any that are in, direct competition to Michael Cremo, but I'm not going to name any of those. But I'm thinking to myself, like, when we look at this one versus this one, how awake are the subjects? You know what I mean?
Thank you. Well, Cremo's saying, I loved it when he told me this. He's like, yeah, evolution is a theory. So it's like, and then the professor says, if you knew of the theory of evolution, you would never say such a thing. It's like, that's the type of tone they're setting to people. So yeah, you're dealing with some big topics when you're saying evolution is a theory. 99.9% of academia you've already been lost right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. So the feedback, do you want to speak to any of the feedback you've gotten in just the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so just that, to wrap it up, is just a full ignore from all of academia. Hundreds of thousands of people have theoretically looked at the paper or at least glanced or whatever. Full support from the people. No comments from anybody on the planet refuting anything pertaining to the science.
Crazy.
Well, that's good, though. That's good if they're not refuting. That's good.
It's science, and science is science, and they ignore science, and that's where we're at. So thank you for letting me get that out.
Do you have anywhere that you want anyone to come find you? Do you have a website or anything that you want to speak to, or just anything else, or no?
Not right this second. Just I can be found on social media or whatever, just through you guys as well. We've got a lot of exciting stuff to do. So this is an ongoing story, and we'll talk about it soon. And we're open to all feedback from everybody on the planet. So we're all in this together, trying to figure out our shared past. Like, nobody owns our past. So thank you guys for your great work. This is great.
Yeah, and I think that this is going to be, like you said, an ongoing conversation. We'll have you back, and this is going to be a conversation that we continue to have. I think it's important. I think it's important for the masses. I think it's important for the Great Awakening is what we'll call it. I think it's important for people trying to understand their origins and their purpose. And so I think this conversation is crucial to a forward movement for sure. So we're definitely going to have you back on the show 100%. Your contribution has been magnificent. Thank you.
You guys are so nice. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you don't mind, if you want to wait backstage, we're going to close this out.
Yeah.
Hey, very good.
Hang tight.
Thank you.